I came to Florida when I was 8 months old from Cuba. My grandfather was a political prisoner. So we were all able to leave the country altogether, thankfully, and get out of there. We've never gone back. I don't have anybody left over there. But thankfully, we were able to get out of there and, make a life here since 1988.
How did you even meet Katie?
So we attended high school together. She was older than I was, but, although it was a very large school because we had about 2,000 students at the school, it was the only high school in Miami Beach. So it was either going to that school, which was the only public high school, or there was one other high school, but it was a private Jewish high school. So really it was the only option. So everybody that lived in Miami Beach, from North Beach all the way down to South Beach attended Miami Beach. So we had a place at the school that was called the Melting Pot, and that's where we would go for lunch. So everybody would sit like in their different groups. So, the Argentinians would sometimes sit together, the Brazilians, the rockers, everybody sat together. There was not a very big presence of Asians in the school. It was a very small group of Asians. So she would hang out with them primarily, but she dated somebody that we both knew, Adam. And I was friends with Adam. So she would be around because we knew Adam, and that's how we met. And we would see them, during lunch and stuff. So she never really talked too much about her dad. She, nor her or her siblings really had a relationship with her father. From my understanding and what she told us, and I didn't really want to delve too much and poke too much and getting too many details. Sometimes for people that's a very sensitive subject, when it comes to parents. But she did tell me that her parents had a big falling out, and her mom basically packed up everything and took them in the middle of the night and left and never looked back.
Oh, you mean they left the father?
They left the house in the middle of the night, packed up everything and just went.
Oh. Okay.
So I don't know if it was, a domestic violence situation. I truly don't know because I never really asked for details. I've learned not to. If you don't want to give me the information voluntarily, I'm not going to pry it out, So she never really wanted to talk about her dad. And honestly, in all the years that I knew her, I think I saw her father twice. And one of those times was when I went to my deposition.
Why would her father be there?
I'm not sure. That was the first deposition. Well, I only did one deposition, but this was from the very beginning that I did my depo with her attorneys and with Georgia. Them three were there. And so this was very early on, when she was first arrested, and her dad was there. It was very weird. Yeah, I saw him in the hallway and I was like, that's interesting. I mean, unless they were just asking him about her background and questions like that. But there really wouldn't be a reason for him to be there because he really wasn't in her life for many years.
So he came from the Philippines to Florida?
No, later? Her father lives here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her father lives here. Her father, if I'm not mistaken, he was either an engineer or an architect, one of those. And he lived here. He lives here. He's not anywhere else. He lives here. He's local.
Okay. Yeah, because I thought I had read, there's tons of misinformation going around, but somebody put a comment saying that her father was in assisted living somewhere, but did you know about that?
I think that they may be talking about Sigfredo's dad because he was very, very sick at one point, and they did travel to go see him. That trip to Dominican Republic was to see his dad because he was in his last days.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay. Sorry to get off track and stuff.
No. Yeah, so we saw each other again on my 25th birthday. I was having the celebration at a strip club. And she went with another mutual friend of ours. And so we saw each other again. And then she was telling me how she has, she was going through this separation. And, immediately connected with her again because I was also going through a separation with my ex-husband. So, I knew what she was dealing with and going through. So, the single mom thing. And I was like, hey, like if you ever want to hang out, we should definitely do that, and it kind of just snowballed from there where we started to hang out all the time.
Is it true that Katie graduated from college?
Yeah, she went to UCF.
Okay, the same school.
I think she only got her associates though, because she did get pregnant with Ethan when she was in UCF.
Okay, yeah,
he did something in pharmaceutical sales, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, or I thought it was some sort of healthcare.
It's something in the healthcare. Maybe it's like healthcare administration. Possibly.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm sure you didn't grill her about her resume or her college studies or something. So, okay.
No, I was in a more of a let's party, I'm single, you're single. I was in that party mode, and, I was going to start working at the club and, all those things. So we really didn't talk too much about that. It was more like, hey, where are we going this weekend?
Okay, so this is another misconception, I think, that has been going around. Was Katie ever a stripper?
No, never.
Okay, I didn't think so. I mean, she was a bottle girl, bartender.
She was a bottle girl for a short period of time where I was working with her. She went from being a bottle girl to then being a bartender there. She preferred being a bartender there. I stayed being a bottle girl. I preferred being a bottle girl. Then when I completely stopped working in the clubs completely, after about a year or a year and a half, she was working at another club in Hollandale where she was also a bottle girl. I don't believe she was a bartender there. She was a bottle girl there because it was like the tip out was better there for bottle service.
What are you supposed to do as a bottle girl?
Well, you take out the bottle and then they have these sparklers and it's a whole big show. And, if it's somebody's birthday and you're dancing with the bottle until that sparkler goes out, and then you're like, all right, what do you want to drink? What do you want to drink? What do you want to drink? And just coming around, making sure everybody has their drinks. If, people need water, clean up the tables, make sure nobody's running out on your tab. Because it does happen, thankfully, like we had good security where we worked and that never happened, but that was basically what we did.
Was there some sort of dress code?
I mean, it's funny because yesterday I had, on your iPhone when you have like picture memories that come back, and it was a memory of, one of those nights that I was working at the club, and it was a picture that I had taken. So it was basically like bodysuits and fishnet stockings and knee-high boots. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. So was it fun working there? I mean, was it?
It was, the industry life is very fun, but it's very exhausting. I myself had a 9-to-5 job. Like I said, I've been doing title. I've been in the title industry and real estate law for 16 years. So I worked my 9-to-5, and I would get out of work at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and I had to be at the club at 10 p.m. I had 2 kids to get ready to drop off at a nanny, so that I can make it there. So it was nonstop. My Fridays started at 7 in the morning and didn't end until 7 in the morning the next day, like a full 24 hours.
Yeah, sounds really exhausting.
So the money is great. It's fun. It's super fun. You meet so many different people. Especially if you like have your regulars that always come to the club, and they'll tip you regardless of them getting a bottle or not getting a bottle. We would have regulars that would just come in and want to have a conversation with you and would just give you $100 tip just because.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was nice, but it was definitely exhausting. And unfortunately, when you're a mom, it doesn't matter how tired you are. You still have to be a mom, So I had a very young child at the time, and I would get home, 7 in the morning, and I would sleep 2 hours, and my daughter was up, and I had to take them to the park. And, because just because I'm tired doesn't mean that I got to keep the kids at home all day and, sleep all day, because I would have to do it again that night and go back that night to go to the club again. So it was exhausting, but definitely fun.
So it sounds like around that 2013, 2014 timeframe, you were both working at the same club?
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Okay. What did Katie ever tell you about Charlie? It sounded like he wasn't really her boyfriend.
He never used the word boyfriend ever. I'd be like, she would be like, oh, that guy, I'm going to see him this weekend. And, he spoils me and he takes me out and I take advantage of that. And it's a good time. She never, ever called him his boyfriend, never seemed like she was upset at the fact, like if she didn't see him and I'm pretty sure she knew that there was other women around and she didn't feel like she was the only woman at any point. Like it was never a thing that she told me, oh, like we're planning to move in together or we want to have children or nothing of the sort.
So she met him at the dental office, the Sophie Dental.
Mm-hmm.
When was the first time you met him, Charlie?
I want to say that I met him maybe 6 or 7 months after that, after her meeting him, because one night she was like, hey, we're gonna go to this club in Las Olas, if you want to come. She's like, Charlie's gonna take care of everything and we could just hang out. I didn't have my kids that weekend, so I was like, okay, that's fine, if he's covering everything, I don't mind going. So that's when I met him. I met him that time and he was super cool. Like it was nothing. It was just like, hey, I'm Charlie. And I'm like, hey, I'm Yindra, and that was that. The only time that I really had like a sit down and actually like talk to the guy and stuff was when we went to the pool.
On Jay's show, which I watched a couple of times, you said something about a limo where Charlie had a limo picking you up. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so he owned a limo that he bought outright. And so we could use that limo. All needed to do was hire a driver. So for Katie's birthday one year, he let her use the limo, hired a driver. The driver drove us around all night to the different, restaurants and bars that we were going to. Like we did, we hopped. And he waited for us, and wherever we needed to go, we went. And he paid the guy, and we just all the girls got money together that night, and we tipped the guy at the end of the night. But that was his limo. We would just need to get a driver if we wanted to use it.
Oh, so Charlie wasn't actually with you?
No, not that night. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
That was her. It was all girls that night.
Mm-hmm. I see. So it seemed like, just based on everything I've seen about this guy, it seemed like he was kind of like a fun person to hang out with.
Yeah, from what I've heard, he apparently dabbled a lot in cocaine. So that could have been part of it too. He was always on party mode and he wasn't like boring or whatnot. And that could have played a big part in it. He kind of came off sometimes as arrogant, that he would just like, like I own a limo and I owe a jet ski and, my house on the water. And you're just like, yeah, dude, like so many people down here are rich. Like we live in Miami. It's one of the most expensive cities. Like we know, and I don't like people like that like flaunt their money, like I'm a very humble person. I come from very humble beginnings. So even if I was to come into money, like I just feel that all that flaunting, like it's just not a good trait. So that was kind of like so maybe in my head I was like, oh, maybe that's why she doesn't want to pursue anything serious with this guy, because he's so arrogant.
Yeah. Do you recall any actual conversations that you had with him?
Well, we spoke briefly about real estate because I do a lot of closings. I work in real estate law, and I'm a title agent. So I did tell him once, I was like, hey, like if you have any any properties that you're purchasing and you want to use the company that I work for closing, I can help you out with the fees, the closing costs and stuff like that, because I can manipulate that within the office. But thankfully, I never, ever closed the deal for him.
Yeah, you didn't have any business dealings with him, then you'd probably have the feds, following you around for that.
Or looking into the company that I worked at and looking at their escrow account to see if this money was being funneled that way, or, who knows.
Okay, so of course, a lot of people had questions about that fateful day at the pool/beach with Wendy. So can you tell us about that?
So it was Father's Day weekend, and it was actually Father's Day. So I did not have my daughter that day. At that time, there was only one, because that was 2014. And I was pregnant at the time, but I didn't know that I was pregnant. But we were having brunch, Katie and I. She called and she's like, "Hey, what are you doing today? I don't have the kids. Sigfredo has the kids, and are you doing anything?" And I was like, "No, I don't have any plans." And she's like, "Let's go to brunch." I said, "Okay, no problem." So got ready, went to brunch. We were sitting having brunch, and maybe like an hour and a half into us having brunch and sitting there, she gets a phone call from Charlie. And Charlie said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And she said, "Well, I'm having brunch with Yindra." And he's like, "Well, if you guys have no plans, you guys should come by and come to the pool. I'm at my parents' house. My sister's here. And we're just hanging out by the pool if you guys want to come." So she asked me if I wanted to go. And I said, "Yeah, sure. I have a couple of hours," because I knew that my ex-husband was bringing my daughter back because he had to work the night shift. He works at the hospital. So he had the night shift and he had to go in. So he was only going to have her for a few hours. So I said, "I'm going." Cool. So my house was too north to go back home to then go back south. And we were already south. So instead, we went to Katie's house, got a bathing suit. And, she let me use a bathing suit and she changed and we made our way there to the pool.
This the continuum?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you get there. Did you meet Wendy immediately?
Yeah, immediately. So we get there, we go through the lobby. I go to the restroom in the lobby, I recall, change out of, the clothing that I was wearing. And we went directly to the pool. And we get to the pool, Wendy was sitting on the side of the pool there. And, Charlie was, standing by the pool. And then he was like, he greeted us and he's like, "This is my sister." And we said hello. And then we all just got in the pool. She didn't get in the pool. She sat outside of the pool and we were just in the pool, like us, Charlie, myself, and Katie were in the pool. And we were speaking to her as she was sitting outside of the pool.
You mentioned you were sort of surprised that she was so pretty.
Yeah. Honestly, like I felt, she was very well spoken, soft spoken at that. Very intelligent woman. We started talking about the book that she had published and how it's going to be used, at the school that, she was working at FSU. She said that it was going to be used the following semester and like how proud she was of that accomplishment. And I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." She just seemed like a regular person. I like to pick attorneys' brains just because I'm actually on my way to pre-law to go get into law school. And I've always been very like, I like to ask questions. So, like I asked her a lot about, what kind of law she practiced and what exactly did she do? And, she talked to me a little bit about the human trafficking aspect in her background and things like that. And I thought it was super cool. And she was just a regular person.
At that point, you didn't know about Charlie supposedly going around to sex tours in other countries and,
No.
Okay.
No. I found out about that during trial because I had, and after like obviously reading everything that came out and everything that has been on Google and, whatnot, because I had no idea about that at all.
Well, getting back to Wendy, did you think it was kind of weird that she started mentioning her book? Like, did it seem arrogant or weird for her to bring that up?
I mean, I think that it just piggybacked off of the fact that I asked her what she did for a living. And when she said that she was an attorney, I said, "Well, what kind of law do you practice?" And, she started telling me what she practiced. And then she said, like I specialize in a lot in human trafficking. Matter of fact, I wrote a book and my book is going to be used. So I didn't, at that point, I didn't see it as arrogant. I just felt that we were having a conversation about what she does. And she just wanted to just, tell me exactly what she was doing and, how she was practicing this law, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Did it seem like Katie knew her? I guess by then they had met at least once.
I think that they may have met previously, but it was normal, like it wasn't like, "Hey, nice to see you again." Like it was just like, "Hey, how you doing?" It was normal. It was just like you see somebody that you haven't seen in a while and you're like, "Hey, how are you?" You know, it didn't
Yeah.
seem, she wasn't having like continuous conversation with her. If anything, I was talking to Wendy more than Katie was.
Okay. And then somehow you guys wound up going to the beach, which was what, right there, right next to
Yeah,
it?
it was shortly thereafter.
Mhm.
We were at the pool for a little bit, and then you know, they were like, hey, like, you want to go over to the beach? They have like, you know, service on the beach where you can order food, and you know, if you guys want to eat something or drink something, and we can do that. And we're like, okay. And you know, we went over there because we weren't paying for it. It was going on the tab, and I was just like, sure. And it had been, you know, several hours. So at this point, you know, you're in the water for a while, and you're just like, okay, I'm hungry now. You know, the beach and the pool gets you hungry.
Yeah.
So I remember very, very clearly that we ate grilled chicken sandwiches and had
Mhm.
sangrias.
Which Charlie paid for.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And then I think you said that it was Charlie's idea to take a picture. Is
Yeah,
that
he was
right?
like, oh, you guys should take a picture. And then we
Mhm.
were like, okay. And like, we all just turned, and we were all already laying there talking. So we all just kind of turned, and he took the picture.
Yeah, with Katie's phone,
Yes.
right?
And
Okay.
then I believe Katie was the one that published it on her Facebook.
Yeah. Were you surprised when that came up as a piece of evidence?
Yeah. So when I went to the first trial and I saw that picture on the projector, I was like,
Mhm.
oh my God. And yeah, so when I finished testifying and I was leaving, a few reporters gave me their cards, you know, and they were like, you know, if you're interested to have an interview. And at that time, I didn't want to, because I knew that I would likely have to come back, and I didn't feel comfortable having conversations with anybody at that point because I was still considered a witness, and I didn't want my words to be twisted or used as, you know, as any type of evidence or, you know, anything like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to talk to anybody. And I said, matter of fact, before I walked out, I said, matter of fact, if you guys use my picture in anything that's coming out, any type of specials, anything on TV, and you guys don't blur my face out, it's going to be a problem because I'm not giving you consent to use my image. I am not a defendant in this case.
But then you did see yourself, because the courtroom is a public place.
Yeah.
So you saw your pictures on the internet or
Yeah,
in the
they're
news.
everywhere. It's like the
Yeah.
infamous beach picture. Like, everybody knows me from the infamous beach picture.
Yeah. But I did notice there's some places where they cut you out of the picture. So maybe
Yeah.
those were people who actually
2020
are.
cuts me out. Whenever 2020 airs,
Mhm.
both of the specials, the picture was on, and they cut me out of the picture.
Okay. So what else happened that day?
So after we did the beach, we went back to the pool, and I think maybe I was there for another 30 or 45 minutes.
Mhm.
And I get a phone call from my ex-husband, and he's like, hey, I have to head back, and I have to drop off the babies. So I need you to, you know, go back home if you're not home. And so I did exactly that. I don't remember if it was Uber or Lyft at the time. I don't know if both existed, but it was one of the rideshare apps. And I was like, because I'm that type of person, like, I'm not the party pooper. You know, if you guys want to stay and party and do your thing, I'm not going to make anybody leave to take me home. I'm an adult. I will find my way home, and everything will
Oh,
be okay.
that's nice.
Yeah, I do the Irish goodbyes plenty. If I'm tired,
Oh,
I want to go, I just go.
uh-huh.
And that was it. I left and I went home. I showered. My daughter came home, and that was that. I didn't see Wendy again. I didn't speak to her. I believe Katie called me later that evening to tell me that she had gotten home or whatnot, and we spoke for we would talk every single day. So that was it. It was just a regular Sunday, and I got myself ready for work the next day.
But Katie didn't say anything to you about Wendy or her problems with Dan?
Nothing, because
Nothing.
when I asked Wendy, oh, do you have children? Because I didn't know of that family dynamic or, you know, anything like that. And she said, yes, I have two boys, and, you know, they're with their dad, up in Tallahassee because it's Father's Day weekend. So I came down here to see my dad.
So you didn't ask more questions? She didn't
I'm
say
definitely not that person. Like, I don't
okay.
dig and dig
Yeah,
and
'cause
dig.
you just
Like,
met her. Yeah.
yeah, you know, she's gonna be like, "Who is this girl? And why is she so creepy? Why is she asking me a million questions? I've never
She's
met her."
being the therapist because she
Yeah,
knows that there's going to be a murder happening. So I don't know, but
yeah,
so going back to your awesome interview with Jay, you mentioned that you could have met Donna and Harvey perhaps that day, but you
yeah.
didn't.
So I always say that I have like witchy vibes. I always have like that, I guess, sixth sense and like inklings in my stomach. And if something feels weird, I just don't do it. So before I left, I had to use the bathroom. And instead of going upstairs to their apartment to use the bathroom, I decided to just use the bathroom in the lobby and then be on my way. So I never seen them ever. Like, I do not know them from a can of paint.
So getting into July, um, you wound up taking care of Katie's children,
Yes.
Katie and Sigfredo's children, that night, that the night of the date of the shooting, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so how did that come about?
So she texted me and, she was like, "Hey, are you doing anything today?" I was pregnant at the time. I was not heavily pregnant, but I was still pregnant and I was sleepy and I really wasn't doing much. It was like the very beginning of my pregnancy. I felt kind of sick. So she was like, "Hey, are you doing anything today? Are you going to be home?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll be here the whole evening, whatever." And then she was like, "Do you think it's okay if I bring the kids over? Charlie wants to go on a date." And I said, "Yeah, but that's not a problem." I was like, "If you need to leave them here, you can." Like I said, I'm not going anywhere so that you don't have to be rushed. If you're going to be going out, at 8 or 9 p.m., I don't expect her to pick up these kids in the middle of the night. I'm like, I wouldn't have had her pick them up in the middle of the night. I would have been like, "Hey, leave them sleeping. It's fine." And that's exactly what happened. She dropped them off and she went on her date and she picked them up the next day. I figured I didn't really talk to her because I didn't want to bother her. She was on a date. And, I just let her know, hey, the kids are okay. They fell asleep. They ate. Just gave her like updates. And that was it. And then the next morning she called me and said that she was on her way to get the kids and she picked them up and it was business as usual.
Yeah. So she didn't seem shaky or strange at all.
Nothing. Like
Nothing else. Oh my God, I have to help extort Charlie.
no. The craziest thing about this whole situation with me is that her behavior never changed around me. I never saw anything crazy. I never saw changed behavior or changed habits. She did the same thing all the time. She would drop off the kids at school and, get this done, go to this job or whatever it was that she was doing. And nothing really changed, at least not around me that I saw. So that's why there was never, ever an inkling of her being involved in anything because there was no change behaviors. And I'm pretty good at picking up things like that and change behaviors in people. And honestly, like it's the scariest thing because nothing at
It's
all.
like she just helped take part in a murder conspiracy, and then she's just like, hey, here to pick up the kids, Well, wasn't she living with her mom at that time?
No, at that time she was not with her
Oh,
mom anymore. At that time she was already in her own place. She lived with her
oh,
mom previously in 2013. Yes, 2013. By 2014 she already had her own place.
oh, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, why didn't she ask her mom to take care of
Well,
the
also
kids?
her mom worked a lot. Her mom
Oh,
was head of nursing, so her mom had incredibly long shifts. Her mom worked a lot, so it was hard for her mom to really to watch the kids, especially because her daughter was smaller and she was more needy. So she didn't have as much energy, for this tiny little baby, comparative to, when she was probably younger and she helped with Ethan. Ethan was already a little older, so I think that that was also part of it. She really didn't leave her kids with her mom like ever.
I mean, do you know how this affected Katie's mom? Because it just seemed like people loved her. She was like a great nurse.
Man, she was one of the sweetest people I've ever met. Like, her death was devastating, I feel. And the crazy thing was that we didn't know that her mom had cancer. She didn't tell me that her mom had cancer. She told me that her mom had, if I recall, it was like a back injury of some sort, and she needed to get back surgery. And I think she did that because she didn't want me to worry, because she knew how cool I was with her mom, and I'm very empathetic, and things like that affect me a lot. So I think that her getting arrested and all of that happening was very detrimental to her mother. And her mom was in remission. And I think that the cancer returned and just took her because, she got stressed out. Your child, your only daughter is facing murder charges. You may never see her in the free world again. That has to be very stressful for a mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really, really sad, because you think that when her parents brought her here from the Philippines, they expected success, American dream, not.
And they themselves are successful. Her siblings are successful. So, I'm pretty sure that that's the mindset that they had. They wanted to have successful children. They were successful themselves and leading them down the right path. I mean, I'm sure a lot of parents, that's what we want. We want always better for our children than we did or we had.
Yeah. Did you hear any of those wiretapped calls where Katie's yelling at Sigfredo's mom?
Yeah.
So about being beat up or something?
Yeah. I mean, for me, when I heard a lot of these calls, I'm like, who is this person on the phone?
She didn't act like that with you?
Never.
Okay.
Never. She was super sweet with her children. I always had her, up here, with being a great mom. Her children didn't need for anything. She provided everything for her kids. Whether Sigfredo gave her money or didn't give her money, she would make it happen. Her kids needed something, it was there. Her kids were going to good schools. She was trying to get them the best education that she could. So, hearing those calls, I was like, which I knew that they had some toxicity within, their relationship because, of his drug use and her being completely against the drug use and, the cops, coming to their house so many times. So I knew that there was that, but I had never, ever experienced it firsthand, because every single time that I was with them, which wasn't too many times, like I can count the amount of times that I was actually with them together, because they got back together later on. Mm-hmm. So when I was actually there, it was normal. We would cook, we would hang out, we would watch movies, we would go to the beach. It was regular things. So I never saw that side.
I remember also hearing on one of the calls, Katie was talking about taking her kids to church. So was she pretty devout?
I mean, I never ever heard her about going to church. I mean, unless she was going to church and I just didn't know about it. I myself am not religious. So, I believe in prayer and I believe in God, but I don't believe in the church. So I myself don't attend church. So unless she never told me because she knew that I wouldn't attend with her because I don't believe in church. But I don't believe she ever took her kids or went herself to church. I know that her mom was a God-fearing woman. So maybe that was the upbringing that she had, but I personally never saw her going to church.
2014, you're busy, you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And 2015, she seems normal, sort of normal also.
Yeah, normal, helping me out, bringing me any cravings that I had in the middle of the night. I would call her. And, I knew she was working because she was at the club. So I knew she was awake, Yeah.
So
who else am I going to call but her, and she would bring me whatever cravings I had at whatever time it was. If I needed a ride somewhere, because like I said, I couldn't drive after a certain period because I had a really big belly and my kid was very big. So it was very hard for me to drive. And she was like in my ribs pretty much encrusted in there.
Oh my
So if
God.
I sat down for too long, she would start kicking my ribs.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So, I didn't drive or do anything. So that was basically it. She would, drive me around and take me, bring me snacks and hang out.
Never told you about what's going on with Charlie. Well, I mean, she was still sort of seeing him like friends with benefits, right?
Yeah. And she made that very clear, right? She was like, yeah, I see him here and there. Not all the time, but yeah, like if I want something or I need something, he'll still give it to me. I do remember that her daughter lost an earring once, and she mentioned it to him, and he showed up with earrings for her daughter. So things like that.
It's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you think she was really happy that she found some sugar daddy?
Yeah, and I mean that's what I called him that all the time. I was like, "Oh, he's your
Sugar
sugar
daddy.
daddy," like. And here in Miami, that's pretty normal,
Seems
So
like it. Yeah.
so many women have sugar daddies here, and it's a normal thing. And they will never call that sugar daddy their boyfriend. It's the sugar daddy.
Did you know anything about Charlie paying for a trip for her and Sigfredo to go someplace?
Yeah, so I do know that she said that, she wanted to go on vacation to the Dominican Republic, and she wanted to take her kids, and so on and so forth. And she was like, oh, like I think that Charlie's gonna help me out with that, with the flights for that. And I was like, oh, that's super nice of him. That's cool. And I was like, well, he's paying for this flight. I mean, does he know that your baby daddy's going, or he's just, and she was like, yeah, he knows. And I was just like, okay.
That's weird.
I mean, in my book, I know that my boyfriend would never do that. But, to each its own. And I'm not judgmental by any means at all, ever, because, I don't judge anybody's life. If that's how you live and you're happy that way, good for you. I applaud you. That's great. So I was like, all right, that's cool. I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, they have that weird relationship or whatever they have going on anyways. So I guess that's what they do.
Okay. What about Charlie buying Sigfredo a GoPro? Did you know about that?
I have no idea about that. I heard about that, but she never mentioned that to me. So I really don't know.
Gift cards or something. Well, did he also pay for her mother to go on a trip? I thought I heard that.
Oh no, that's
Like
I don't even recall. Oh, I think she did mention something about a cruise that, she wanted to take her mother on a cruise, but I don't know if he did pay for that or not. She did mention that she wanted to take her mom on a cruise though.
Okay, so 2015, let's see. You guys started working together at a real estate company, right?
Yes. So like I said, I've always been doing real estate law and title insurance. So
Yeah.
I was the manager for that branch, which happened to be in Sunny Isles. So that branch was inside of a real estate office. So we had our own office within the real estate office. So the title company was within the real estate office. So I had my own office in there. And so I dealt with the realtors all day long. They would come in there and ask how their transaction was going, because we were basically the real estate, the title insurance company for that real estate office. We had a joint partnership with them. So at that time, there was a guy in there that his name was Fabian, and he needed an assistant. He needed somebody just, to do his calls and schedule his appointments and, just regular administrative stuff. And he comes to me one day and he goes, hey, like, do you know anybody that would want a job? Like, it's very easy stuff. And I knew that she was always looking, for, substantial, like more income in her life. And I was like, well, how easy is it? And he's like, well, she doesn't even have to come in. If she doesn't want to come in, she could do it from her house. Like everything's from the computer and the phone. And I was like, oh, this is perfect for her, and it'll be flexible for her schedule and, with her kids and, all of that. So I presented it to her and she's like, yeah, of course. So I introduced them, they hit it off, and she started working maybe like 3 or 4 days after that.
So you saw her pretty much every day then?
She sat in my office.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And she's just carrying on life is normal. Sometimes she
She's
gets
carrying on,
freebies.
I'm carrying on. I'm,
Yeah.
cutting my checks and sending my wires and, dealing with my closings. And she's on her side of the office because I had a pretty big office. So I had a whole side of the office that I wasn't using. So there was a desk there and she sat there with her laptop and her headphones and she did her thing and I did mine. And, here and there we would talk to each other. We would have lunch a lot together and stuff like that. But it was always normal things. I never heard her having any crazy conversations on the phone or anything like that. I do know that she would see Charlie sometimes for lunch and she would tell me, oh, I'm gonna see Charlie for lunch or whatnot, and I'd be like, oh, okay, cool, and like I would go do my own thing and have lunch on my own or sit in my office and have lunch and watch my Netflix. But it was normal. I never had her heard her say anything crazy or plotting a murder.
Yeah, or acting suspicious or something. Well, but so was the last time you saw Charlie that Father's Day back in 2014?
Yeah.
Okay, I see. So when did things start happening? Like when did you realize
Oh man.
something was wrong?
So it was the last week of May, 2016, and I get up, business as usual. I'm going to work. It was a Thursday, and I'm going into work, but my phone was in my purse, and I wasn't paying attention to my phone. Like I had taken it off the charger, and I just put it in my purse, and I got ready for work. I'm driving to work, still not looking at my phone. And I get to my office and I take my phone out and I have a text message from a friend. And it is the front page of the Sun Sentinel. And it is a mugshot of Sigfredo.
Oh.
And I'm like, what is this? So I start reading and I see that, he's being arrested for this murder. And, I start connecting the dots because it says Dan Markel and then it says Wendy Adelson and I see Adelson and I'm like, Adelson. And I'm like, Charlie Adelson.
Charlie.
And like,
yeah.
Oh my God, this is the brother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what is going on? And at that point, I started getting bombarded with phone calls and text messages from different people like, oh my God, did you see? Did you see? Did you see? Because now it's all over social media. Like all of our friends are seeing it, seeing this front page and it's on, on Instagram and Facebook and whatnot. And I'm still super confused. We're supposed to leave to Disney the following day, on vacation. And this man just got arrested for murder. And I'm like, what is happening? So at that moment, I didn't call her because I said, well, what would I be feeling if my husband was arrested for murder right now? How would I feel? Would I want to be bombarded by, with questions and phone calls? Absolutely not. So I said, when she's ready to call me, she will. But she never did. She never called me.
Oh, but so she just never came back to work?
No, never came back to work. So the following day we were leaving, mind you, like I was still gonna go. This trip was paid for, the accommodations were paid for, I wasn't gonna have, my kid missed out on Disney and stuff like that because of what just happened. Unfortunately, yes, something like that happened and it sucks, but my kids didn't have to pay for that. Neither did I, and we still went on our little mini vacation, for that weekend, and we came back and still had to deal with the fact that this happened. And it's like, oh my God, like what is going to happen with this? Is this real? Like, did this really take place? And now what's going to happen to her? That was one of the first things that I thought. I said, are they going to think that she's involved in this too?
You're saying this vacation was supposed to be with Katie and Sigfredo?
Yes, and the kids, because the last week of May is her daughter's birthday. So we're celebrating her daughter's birthday.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. So what was the question? Both kids' birthdays ruined, but the trip to Orlando was for the son's birthdays, huh?
No, it's the daughter's.
Yeah, but like, didn't you feel curious, like texting Katie?
Man, we were sitting in Disney, my ex-husband and I. At that time, he was still my husband, but we were sitting in Disney, and I remember we were sitting downstairs, and my daughter, I only took one of my kids because the little one was too little at the time. She was only about 3 or 4 months old. So I'm sorry, not 3 or 4 months old. She was a year and 3 months, more or less. And I felt that she was still too small to actually enjoy Disney. And it was just going to be crazy to have, lug her around and the stroller. So my mom stayed with her, and I only took my big girl. And I remember she was playing. There was like this outdoor playground water area in the resort we were staying. So my ex-husband and I sat down, and there was these tables there, and we ordered some drinks. And I looked at him, and he looked at me, and he was like, "What do you think is going to happen?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Do you think she's involved?" And I was like, "I don't know. Like, I don't even know what to think. Like, this is the craziest thing I have ever been in the middle of." You have to understand, like, I am the type of person that I look into a whole bunch of, cases that are going on. I keep up with all this, true crime. And if you look at my Netflix, it's like recommended for you. It's like serial killer documentaries and, FBI things and, things like that. So that is my favorite show of all time. So of course, I'm very curious as to what's going on, but I feel that even if I message her or anything, that she wouldn't answer, because she was like, well, the cops are looking at my phone. So maybe she didn't want to talk on her phone or text me or say anything that may incriminate her or him at the time, because I from what I understand, she did retain counsel for him quite quickly. So as curious as I was, and as much as I wanted to ask questions, I knew that I wasn't going to get an answer from her. So I was like, why am I going to even bother this girl? Like, she's dealing with so much. Her husband's in jail right now. He's facing murder charges. I was like, she doesn't want to be bothered. So I just had that like in the back of my head, like, oh my God, like what is happening? What is happening? What is happening? And so I didn't end up texting her until maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks after. And all I texted her was like, hey, like, I hope you're safe. I hope the kids are doing okay. Let me know if you need anything. And I kept it very short and simple. My concern was the kids mostly, like I was very, very close with the children. So I was like, how are they holding up, without seeing their dad? And, are they asking questions? Although her daughter was very small at the time, Ethan was bigger. But I didn't know how she was processing it all. And I just wanted her to feel like she had a safe space with me, that she can, talk to me, and, she needed to vent or whatever it was. Because I honestly, truly didn't really know what was going on. And I felt that she was just scared because I didn't know of her.
She's innocent. Yeah. Then what? No response?
No response. Well, I think that she did respond, but like hours later, and she was like, we're okay. The kids are okay. We're staying safe. She's like, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you in one, soon. And I was like, okay. I left it at that. I didn't poke the bear, as they say, and ask her like, hey, what are you gonna do? Like, did you get an attorney? Did you do this? Did you do that? I didn't ask her too much. I didn't feel like she was gonna say too much either. So I kind of just left it alone and was like, it's going to be whatever it's going to be. I did think in the back of my head, I was like, they may come and talk to me because I was with both of them a few weeks prior. I want to say 2 weeks prior to that, we had like a big beach day. And that was one of the times that I hung out with both of them, with Sigfredo and her. So I was around him. So I was like, they may come and question me because I'm always around. But I didn't think anything of it. It was just like, okay, like I know them. And they're going to just ask me like, what, do you know anything? Do you know them? And that's it. Little did I know that I was going to sit down in a conference room for like 2 hours.
Yeah, being grilled.
Being grilled.
Be the subject of a FBI surveillance.
Yeah. On a Taco Tuesday, out of all times, they chose the worst day.
Wait, what was on Taco Tuesday? Was that when they came to your
When the
workplace?
FBI showed up to the real estate office was on a Taco Tuesday, and I remember it clearly because I was going to go have tacos with a girl that I know, and we made plans to go have tacos. I had my dad picking up my kids, and I was like, "We're going to go have these tacos," and I was like, "Dang it, can't go have these tacos now."
Jeez. Well,
I love tacos.
okay. Well, can we back up a little bit? So you mentioned that Sigfredo was like a big teddy bear to your kid.
Yeah.
That you never saw him being violent.
No, I never saw. So I've known him for many years. Like I said, he dated somebody that I'm close to. So we all grew up together in the same neighborhoods over here. You know, Miami Beach is not that big. So most people know each other on the beach. And he did date her and all of that. And yes, he did his things, you know, when he was young. You know, I believe, you know, he did a lot of like robberies, like you know, robbing cars and stuff like that when he was young, things like that. So it was things like that. I never saw him do something violent. I never saw him with a weapon. And I never even saw him using cocaine. Like he never used in front of me ever. And I don't know if it was because it was a respect thing and he didn't want to disrespect me because I was always very respectful with him. He was always very respectful with me. He was great with the kids. The kids loved him. They adored him. He was awesome with the kids. You know, he would play with the kids.
Wow, yeah. That's kind of unusual to hear based on what I read about
and
him.
He's a big guy. Okay,
yeah,
like
it looks like it.
Like the TV does no justice. Like this is a very big guy, okay, and he comes off very intimidating because he looks very intimidating. His eyes are very intimidating. You know, he has those bright eyes. But honestly, like we went when I led the thing that I was talking about going to the beach shortly before his arrest. He was building sandcastles with my kids.
Oh,
you know, and playing catch on the beach. And it was just, he was a regular guy. Did he have a dark past? Yes. I mean, in my head, I'm like, okay, who doesn't? You know, it is what it is. But it was never to the fact that I'm like, oh my God, that I was scared to be around him, nor was I scared that my children were around him, because I would never allow my kids to be around him if I felt that he was a dangerous person in that way. And he just never came off like that.
Yeah, because I thought I've read that when he was a kid, he set fire to a building and later he beat up somebody with pipes with his brother or somebody.
Yeah, I heard about that. I don't know the like the ins and outs fully of it, but I did hear about that. You know, when I tell you that I know him and stuff like that, it's just we know each other from like the neighborhood. Was I really hanging out with him? No. Did I hear things here and there? Yes. Half of the time, did I think there were rumors? Maybe things that were being inflated to look cool. Maybe. But if I didn't actually see him do it, like I can't be like, oh yeah, he did that, because I really don't know.
Yeah. So was he your year in school?
No, he's older.
From school?
No, he's older, and he didn't graduate with us or anything. You know, when Katie and him were dating, he wasn't even in school. He was out of school.
Did he ever tell you that he hit her or
no,
yanked the necklace off her neck or
no? And I think that maybe she didn't, because I'm very like protective with my friends. You know, and I likely would have said something to him, and I think that she just didn't want the back and forth if I said something to him and then maybe he said something to me, and it would just have gotten nasty and snowballed. So it's very likely that maybe that's why she didn't say it to me. She did complain about other things, you know, about him being a crappy dad and, you know, not financially being there for the children, or not even just not being there for the kids in general. You know, picking up bad habits, you know, living with certain characters and having certain characters around, and she wouldn't allow the kids to be around because of that. But she never mentioned any domestic violence.
Yeah. Speaking of characters, I don't know if you feel like talking about this, but did you know about Sigfredo's girlfriend, Shrimp?
I knew
actress or stripper, or Katie called her a prostitute.
She was.
Mm-hmm. Did you actually know her?
I did not know her. Funny enough, I also saw her when I was being depoted. She was there. She was in the hallway, but which super weird because I'm like, why are they depositioning this girl? But I do know that she was in a porn. And I can tell you that I saw it myself. So it's not like it was hearsay or anything like that. So she was, yeah, she was interesting. And I also know that she was in an accident with Sigfredo.
Yeah, motorcycle.
And like she nearly died in that accident. Thankfully, she was wearing her helmet. But other than that, I didn't know too much of her. Like Katie really didn't like her and didn't want her to be around the kids because she was very sketchy. And she didn't want her children to be exposed to those things. So that's all that I knew of her. Like we never even really talked about her because Katie would just get very upset whenever she would come up in conversation. So we didn't talk too much about her. At one point, Katie was not allowing the kids to go there at all because of the people that were coming in and out of there. So it's possible.
Yeah, because in Lewis's proffer, he mentioned Sigfredo had some sort of roommate named Himano who just came out of prison. And Lewis thought, why is he letting his kids just stay in the apartment with this dude that he barely knows who just got out of prison?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So
she had an issue with that. She had a big issue with that.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the sad thing is that now Katie is a criminal herself. You know, she's in prison. So, I mean,
it's terrible. I can't imagine not being able to be in my kids' lives, reaching certain milestones in their life, you know, seeing them graduate, seeing them having children, getting married, you know, pursuing their careers, you know, whatever it is.
High school graduation.
Yeah. Correct. You know, in the outside free world, you know, to think that she will never, ever be outside in the free world and, you know, freely hug her children. I don't know how I could live like that.
Back to 2016. Mm-hmm. So Katie didn't get arrested until October, I think. So did you talk to her before she got arrested, like later in 2016?
I spoke to her actually 3 or 4 days before her arrest.
Oh.
Because she got arrested right before my birthday.
Oh.
My birthday's October 5th.
Okay.
So, and I believe she got arrested the 3rd or the 4th, something like that. She got arrested literally like 1 or 2 days before my birthday. And I invited her to come out to dinner. And I was like, listen, like, I'm having a small dinner for my birthday. I was like, we'll even cover the bill for you. Like, you don't even have to, like, because I knew, I was like, you know, maybe she's dishing out all this money for attorney's fees, you know, for Sigfredo. And, you know, maybe she's not, you know, she doesn't have the money to come out to dinner. But I just wanted to see her. I just wanted her to be there, you know, like she was my friend, you know. And a lot of people ask all the time, like, how can you continue to be friends? And, you know, she's a criminal and she's this, but that's not the person that I knew. And I'm nobody to judge anybody, you know, I'm not God. I can't, you know. And the person that I knew helped me a lot through a lot of dark times in my life, where I didn't have a lot of people to help me. I come from a very small family. I have no siblings at all. I have no aunts and uncles because my mother has no siblings. So my family is teeny tiny. And, you know, I've considered her my family. So that's not the person that I knew. The Katie that is behind bars right now, that is accused of, you know, or convicted of, you know, setting up this murder, is not the person that I knew ever. So I just wanted her around, and I wanted to see her, and it was really hard. Like, you know, it's been difficult, you know, it's been many years now, but it still affects me, you know, like it sucks. Like, I wish I could see her, and I wish I could see the kids, and I wish things could go back to normal, but there's no rewind button for this. Like, it's done. Like, we can't bring him back. You know, Dan is dead. Like, we can't bring him back. We can't bring him back for his children. We can't bring him back to, you know, to continue his career. We can't do any of that. And it's because of the choices that she made. So while I love her to death, you know, I can't condone anything that she did because somebody lost their life, and that's not fair.
Yeah. Well, you did talk to her, what, once after she was in jail, a couple of times or something?
Yeah, I talked to her a couple of times. I did email with her a couple of times. And we spoke, not of anything of the trial. We don't speak about the case at all. It's more of, how are your kids? How are my kids? How are you feeling? How's everything in there? Stay strong. And that's pretty much it. Like, that's really the only thing I can say to her, and try to encourage her to stay strong in there. It must be super difficult, now that she's in prison, because from what I understand, jail and prison are not the same thing. I've never been in there, but, from people that I know that have, even for a short stint of time, it's not an easy place to be in.
Well, did you ever feel like going to visit her?
I did think about it before she was sentenced. I thought about it, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll wait until she's sentenced and actually placed where she's going to be. And I was like, well, if I make the trip over there, like, what am I going to ask her? Like, what am I going to say? And really my question has always been, why? Like, why did you do it? You had no reason to do it. Like, this is a girl that doesn't come from a horrible background. This is a girl that comes from a family that's educated. Like, they're not super wealthy, but they were okay. And I just felt that if she needed the money that badly, she could have reached out to her siblings. She could have even pulled out a loan, a personal loan at a bank, because she had good credit, and just default on the loan, whatever. Then file for bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's better than killing somebody to make some, whatever it was, 25,000, 30,000.
Like, it just tells you how little life is valued sometimes by people. And it's a bad situation, because to think, as a parent, Dan's parents, that their child was only worth $100,000. Like, that's terrible, to think that they offed my kid for $100,000. That's insane.
Oh, yeah, it's like, come on, we'll give you the money not to kill our child. Or
I'll find it somewhere. I may not have it, but I'll make it happen. If that means that my child's going to be okay. It's just, it's a very sad situation all around for everybody involved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said you only saw Charlie maybe 3 or 4 times, but do you think Charlie was such a good talker that he talked Katie into it and dangled the money in front of her? And
honestly, and it's not just me. I'm talking, several people that I have spoken to over here, and we feel that he took the opportunity of saying, well, this girl has kids, she needs money for her kids.
Yeah.
Her ex is not providing for her kids. She needs money. So maybe if I offer her this, she'll take it. And, these guys are, natural born killers or whatever they are. And they'll do it for $100,000. This is, these are Black and brown people in Miami that don't have money.
Poor. Yeah.
You're talking about a family that is worth millions of dollars to offer somebody that has, $150 in their bank account, $100,000. That's a lot of money for somebody that is poor in their eyes, comparative to them, poor. So I do think that they did take advantage of the fact that these are people that come from, living in trailer parks or living in low income housing and not living on, at a house on the water in Fort Lauderdale,
Yeah. And you did mention before that Katie had lots of financial problems because Sigfredo wasn't helping sometimes.
Yeah, he didn't help at all most of the time. She just had to figure it out, and that's why sometimes she was working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. and be able to keep up with tuition, because she had her kids in a private the little one in a private daycare, like she had her other kid in a charter school. And she wanted to make sure, like I said, that her kids had a good education and all of that. So she made it happen. Like, if she had to work 2 or 3 jobs, like, and she had to go do like a marketing thing, or she had to go do a liquor thing at a club that she was getting paid $200 or $300 that night, she would do it. She would take it.
Did her mom give her money?
No, not that I'm aware of. I don't think she ever asked her mom for money, because she did have jobs. So she didn't want to be like mooching off of her mom, and she knew how hard her mom worked. And, she was like, I don't want to take my mom's money. I'll figure it out. That was her mindset. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. What about, I don't know if you know about this, but her sister-in-law is in prison too.
She's not in prison anymore.
Huh? She got out?
She's not in prison anymore. She's out.
Oh, okay. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, if you look at her docket, you'll see they filed some motions there that they won, and she was released early.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I don't know much about this person as a person.
Yeah, I met her once. I met her at Katie's daughter's one of her birthday parties. And I met her there, briefly. I spoke to her briefly. And, she was a regular person, she was her sister-in-law. And, apparently she was a CPA, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that.
She worked for the accounting firm.
Yeah, and she embezzled, 1.2 mil or something like that over a sequence of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I saw in one of her court filings that she said she was taken advantage of by some sort of spiritual healer.
I saw that. I read that somewhere.
Who turned out to be a witch. And but do you think any of that money was used to help pay for Katie's legal bills?
I thought about that, because I was like, well, she came at $1.2 million is a lot of money.
Yeah, close to it.
Granted, her defense may have cost that in total, but I also read that a lot of those funds were used to pay off the house, pay off the car, pay off credit cards. So how much of that money did she really have left over that she actually gave, towards Katie? I really don't know. Did she maybe not want to give Katie money like that so that there wouldn't be any suspicion or red flags? Because, like, how did you come up to, how do you have this money? Like, where is it coming from? Maybe she didn't want to be questioned. So I did think about it. But then I also read somewhere that, like, that was looked into, and, it didn't happen. Like, no money.
Yeah, or the judge didn't think that the Adelsons were paying.
Yeah, that they had a private meeting, in chambers, or I read something about that.
Yeah, but people are still speculating. It's the internet.
Well, so. I with the new filings now, that I did see that her brother is on the witness list. That is weird. Because why would he be on there?
Because maybe he had some communications with Donna.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, that maybe Donna called him and said, hey, we know you're in bind. We're willing to help pay for the legal bills. Mm-hmm. Because that's what he said to the investigator. And Katie mentioned that too, that the Adelson family offered to pay her legal bills, but she claimed that her brother turned it down. Yeah. But that still makes Donna look so suspicious if it's true. It's like,
why would you want to pay for this girl's legal
bills? Like some random friend.
It's not like it was, like your son's wife or whatever. Like, it's just a random girl that he was seeing. Why would you want to pay for her legal bills? That's very weird.
And it was years after they stopped hooking up. So
correct.
So, okay. Well,
it should be interesting to see. I believe this trial is going to be one of the more interesting ones of all of the trials.
Yeah. Well, speaking of trials, let's see. So you were contacted by investigators. Were you scared when they came your workplace?
When the FBI came, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on? They came looking for her. They didn't come looking for me.
Oh.
They came looking for her. And so the office manager came to my office with a sticky and said, hey, is this the girl that used to sit in your office? And I was like, yeah, who's asking? Because at this point, I'm like, what's going on? I'm already like on edge. It's been, months now. And I'm like, okay, who's here? Who's asking for her? Whatever. And the lady's like, okay. So she goes back to the front. And I guess she told him like, yes, like she did work here, but she's no longer here. So I guess they asked her like, well, how do you know she's not here? Who told you that? And they said, well, Yindra did. She said my name. And the guy, the FBI agent, was like, oh, we need to talk to her. And they came into my, and the office manager came back and she was like, well, now they want to see you. And I was like, man. So at that point, I shut down my computer, called my dad, and I said, hey, go pick up the kids. I'm not going to be home for a few hours, because I already knew that it was going to be some time. I asked them for their credentials, because I needed to see who I was talking to.
Yeah.
And we sat there. It was like at least 2 hours we sat there.
Mm-hmm. So he didn't feel scared, like, oh, I need to get an attorney.
No, because I knew I wasn't hiding anything, and I didn't know anything about the case. So many people have asked over the years. I'm coming up on my 20-year high school reunion. It's next week.
Oh no, everyone will ask you.
And I am dreading this because I already know how many questions I am going to get, especially from people that have moved away and still have kept up with the case and now are here, years later, and they have questions, but a lot of people are like, well, how didn't you know? You guys were together every single day. She must have said something. You must have heard something. People don't understand. Like, I honestly, truly would not put myself or my family in any predicament that would get me in any sort of trouble that would take me away from my children and my family. If something was said to me, I would have talked about it long time ago, because I am not going to be any sort of accessory after the fact, or, or I'm like intruding obstructing an investigation or anything like that. I will never do that. I care too much about my family and my children to put myself in that position. So, I've never hidden anything. My story has never changed. My testimony has never, ever, ever changed or wavered. I've been truthful the whole time. So I really wasn't scared. It was just the fact, you have the FBI there. Like, I watched shows of the FBI interviewing people. I never thought that I would be sitting somewhere, being interviewed by the FBI.
Did you have to provide text between you and Katie?
No, they didn't ask me for anything. They didn't ask to see my phone. They didn't, nothing at all. Nor did they ever say that I was being recorded or, any of those things. It was just, we're having a regular conversation, and, they took out a notepad and, they did make some notes, but other than that, that's it.
Mm-hmm. Well, then how did you find out that they had been watching you for?
Oh, because they did mention that, they were like, we've been watching you guys for a while. So like, we knew that you were her friend. And I was like, what do you mean watching me for a while? Like, yeah, like we were parked in front of your house. And I was just like, so I started to connect the dots, and the only car that was consistently there was that white van.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, that's kind of creepy, huh? Yeah. Okay. So then you had to be deposed by who? Tara Kawas?
Tara, Chris DeCause, and Georgia was there.
Okay. So what was that like?
Man, that was scary. I've never been deposed ever in my life for anything. I've rarely been in a courthouse. I've been in the courthouse for my divorce. And that's like maybe a traffic ticket. Other than that, that's it. I didn't know what to expect. So I was super nervous, the whole time, but I was very truthful. I did get a little emotional because they did talk about Katie's mom and her passing, and it was still very fresh. And we spoke about that, and I did get a little emotional. I did cry a little bit. And Georgia handed me a used napkin from her.
Oh, a used napkin. I guess that's all they
Yeah,
had. Huh?
that's all she had, I guess, in her purse. And she handed it to me, and I was just like, I'm not gonna use this. Like, what are we doing? But it was scary. I'm not gonna lie, I was very nervous. But again, I was very truthful. I told them everything that I knew. And anything that they asked me that I didn't know, I gotta tell them I don't know. I'm not aware, of those things. And I think that they believed me because there wasn't really too many follow-up questions that Georgia had or anything like that. Like, I feel that they likely listened in on, phone calls and things like that. And they saw that I had zero involvement, didn't know anything. So I don't think they wanted to press me too much because I'm pretty sure they knew that I had no involvement.
They're asking you a bunch of questions. Did you start getting more of an idea of what the whole theory of the case was?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I sat there and I was like, oh my God, like she does have something to do with this, because how did Charlie talk to Sigfredo and Sigfredo spoke to Lewis? She's the only common denominator. So I'm like, wow, she really did have a part in this. How much of a part she had, I don't know. But she had some part in this, because there's no way that they could have communicated without her. I didn't feel that at one point, I guess I wanted to lie to myself and say, well, Sigfredo had gotten Katie's phone once, and he called who he thought was Charlie, but it ended up being Harvey. And he left this voicemail, whatever. And I said, well, he could have gotten Charlie's number from her phone and just kept the number so that he can harass him or scare him or whatever it was, to stay away from his girl. So in my head I was like, well, it could have been that, and they could have planned it that way. But then again, this is a man that is sleeping with your baby mama. Like, why would you want to have any type of rapport with this man? So I was like, I don't think that's feasible. So slowly but surely, I was like, man, like she really does have something to do with this. Like, this sucks. It sucked.
Yeah, very bizarre. So, so after that deposition, did you know you would probably have to be a witness at the trial?
So I didn't know. I really didn't know how the process worked. Again, I've never been deposed. So I didn't know that because I was being deposed, I likely was going to end up on the witness list to testify. I actually moved after that, and I moved to a new house. And the trial had been delayed and delayed and delayed. So when they went to look for me, they couldn't find me. And it took them a year to locate me as to the new place where I was living. And they ended up surrounding my house at like 7 a.m. To serve me with a subpoena.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you mentioned that on Jay. And you were just trying to get the kids into the car, and your husband opened the door and said, hey, there's a bunch of like cops.
Yeah, he's like, what did you do?
Yeah.
He's like, they have the house surrounded and there's like 4 cops out here. Why are they here? And I'm like, I don't know. And I wasn't nervous because I knew I hadn't done anything. So I'm like, it could be a mistake. Maybe they're knocking on the wrong door. Like, who knows? Yeah. So, I come out there. First thing I ask as normal, let me see your credentials. Who are you? And, they showed them to me. And then I was like, okay, what are you here for? And they hand over the subpoena, and they're like, we've been looking for you for a year. And I was like, I've been here.
Wait, but like, did they already have your phone number, or
they
knew
did?
Where you were?
They did, but they never showed up to my job. They never called. Nobody called me or anything. But I moved. I never gave them my new address or anything like that. I didn't feel like I needed to. Again, I didn't know that I would get subpoenaed to be a witness. So I didn't feel that I needed to give the new address. So I didn't. And so I remember the cop hands me the subpoena. He goes, man, this must be a very important case. They've exhausted all these resources to find you. And I'm like,
it's weird. Why didn't they find you through your job? That could have saved.
And I'm like, everything here, Florida is a public record state. You put anybody's name onto the internet and you can see current addresses, past addresses, you can see properties, places of employment. You can see so much, like, there's so many girls, like FBI girls, down here that you can find anybody. Okay. So I found that to be really weird. And I think they were just being a little dramatic, but.
Oh, but at least you knew it was important to be there. So, yeah. So both times they gave you a subpoena, and then when were you told that you had to, get on a plane?
So they called me from Georgia's office, and they were like, hey, like, we need to, prep you to actually come. And I was like, oh, like, I'm really going. Like, I really need to fly up there and do this. Yeah. And this is televised. I was a wreck. I was an emotional wreck. Needless to say, when I got to Tallahassee that night, I did not sleep. Any noise that I heard in the hallway, I was like, oh my God, Charlie sent somebody to kill me.
Oh, that's horrible.
In the back of my head, I was like, it was scary, like, it's a big case. Like, this is, somebody's life is on the line. Like, they're going to jail for the rest of their life. And maybe he's going to think that I'm going to say something that's going to involve him, even though he's not arrested. And maybe he sent somebody to kill me. Like, I was next to the ice machine, and every time that the ice would fall, I was thinking somebody was trying to open my door.
Yeah, that's freaky. That is pretty scary. And you went through.
Yeah, it wasn't the best.
Yeah. So you're all by yourself. You had to go to Tallahassee. Was it your first time going there?
It was my first time ever visiting Tallahassee. I actually really liked it. The people were so nice, compared to Miami. You come to Miami, people are not nice here, anything about Miami. So I was walking to the courthouse, and, there was people saying good morning. And, and I was just like, so I found out the weather was nice. I was like, oh, it's not that hot. Everybody's so nice here. It's clean, but as soon as I got into that courthouse, I was just like, dread came over. And I was like, man, like, I'm going to have to sit here. This is going to be televised. Everybody's going to see this. People on the internet are mean. Court TV might be there. Everybody's going to see me. And it was scary. And then I also thought, oh my God, this is the first time I'm going to see her in all this time that has passed. And am I going to have to see her shackled? Like, who is this person that I'm going to see? Like, I can't hug her. I can't ask her, how are you feeling? And it's rough because, like I said before, at the end of the day, she was my friend. And, I was concerned. I was like, like, how is she holding up? Like, this is a woman that didn't even have a parking ticket. And I'm like, how is she going to survive in here? Like, how is she going to do this? And I was scared. I was sad. It was just like a big mix of emotions. It was a terrible trip, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, when you got to the courthouse, did someone from the prosecutor's office greet you? Or
we had to actually, the first thing we had to do was go up to the prosecutor's office. All the witnesses had to go up there, pretty much report, that you were there. And then they told us where we had to sit. They told us not to, watch any of the testimony or anything like that before. So I didn't. I sat on that bench, and I was there for a long time sitting, and I just reviewed my deposition. I just read it again. I read the deposition several times, on the flight, on the Uber. I knew that deposition back and forth because I had to refresh my memory as well. I have very good memory, but then again, like, I felt like I was so nervous that I was like, okay, maybe I'm going to forget something, and I don't want them to think that I'm lying, so it's just like an accumulation of just, oh my God, are they going to doubt me? It was a lot of things, it was very scary.
Yeah. Well, you actually seem very composed when I watched you on the videos. So
Yeah.
so good for you. You
Yeah, I
didn't
had to
look
do like the okay, game
okay.
face. We got
Well,
this.
did you notice some people left some mean comments and they're like, why does she keep closing her eyes while she's testifying? Now I'm thinking you were probably exhausted and your
I
eyes
was.
were
I
from
was so
half asleep.
tired. First of all, we flew in very late. Because for whatever reason, the way that they booked the flights, I flew from Miami, Fort Lauderdale to Atlanta,
Oh,
and then back down to Tallahassee.
oh,
So it
that's
was a
awful.
very lengthy flight day. And
Yeah.
I don't think we made it to the hotel until maybe 11 or 12. To be up the next morning at like 7 a.m. and not really because I didn't sleep. So I was just exhausted. I was mentally drained. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to do that. So it was a lot of things. And I just feel that that was my coping, and I was just tired, all in all.
Yeah. Plus the fact that you're testifying for the state against your friends.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just so nerve wracking.
Yeah.
Um, well, oh, kind of a weird question, but did you have to pay for stuff first and then get reimbursed? How did it
So
work?
the flight is paid for by them and booked by them, and you're just sent your itinerary and you just check it, make sure your name is correct, and make sure you're flying out of the right airport, and all of that. The only thing that they don't pay for in advance is your meals and your Ubers. If you're taking any Ubers, from the airport to the courthouse or to the hotel, but you do get reimbursed for it at the end. So after testifying, you go back up to the prosecutor's office up there and you pretty much like check out, and then you have to email all your receipts. They tell you the email that you have to send it to, which is the assistant for Georgia, and you send her all the receipts, and then they reimburse you pretty quickly. Within a week, I had a check.
Okay. Well, you said you had to wait forever on the bench. So could you leave to get food or do
No,
anything?
you couldn't go anywhere because they're
You
like,
had to
well,
just
they
stay
didn't
there?
know when you're going to be called, right? But then
Oh,
again, if you go into, it's lunchtime. So it's like, okay, yeah, I've been sitting here for 3 hours. Now it's lunchtime. So then you go and they're like, okay, it's lunchtime. And then I'm like, okay, am I going to be called? Like, what's going to happen? And then they would tell you, like, okay, yeah, you have like two people before you, or, like they kind of let you know more or less. But, you still sit there for a couple of hours.
oh, okay. So that's exhausting. So after you testified, did you stay to watch the trials?
No, I actually testified. I remember I testified. I was handed a couple of business cards by different journalists that were there. And I was just so mentally drained. I had seen her for the first time in a very long time. And I didn't think that I would be as upset as I was. I was overcome with emotion. And I remember going into the restroom and I had a full blown breakdown and I just
Um,
cried, like boo-hoo cried. And there was a lady in the bathroom. I don't know who she was. And she was just in there because there's other trials going on the same floor. So I don't know who the lady was, but she was an older lady and she was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, I'll be okay. Like I feel like I need to cry, like I need to let it out. And that was that. And I cried it out. And then I went and I sat at a local little pub restaurant thing, that was close by there because where we were staying was walking distance from the courthouse. So I was able to walk back to the hotel. So I walked back over there. I got my stuff and I went and I sat at this, bar restaurant until it was flight time because I didn't have to fly out for several hours after that.
oh,
So, I sat there for a while and then that's it. And then I got on my Uber and I went to the airport.
oh, okay. Yeah. So what was it like in the courtroom testifying? Like, did you actually make any eye contact with Katie?
I did.
Okay.
So I hadn't seen her in a while, like I said. I remember Tara saying, well, I tried to see if it was possible for you to, at least say hello to her or whatnot. And she said that Georgia said that no, that I couldn't speak to her at all, which is understandable. I get it. You're not supposed to be interacting with the defendants. So that kind of made me sad because I'm like, dang, like I'm never ever gonna actually like be able to speak to her, face to face again. So that was pretty sad. But it was, it was just scary. I was just like, man, do I really have to be in here?
That's awkward. What about
it was so
Sigfredo?
awkward.
Like, were you scared of Sigfredo?
No. And he never even like really looked my way. He knew that I didn't know anything, and he knew that I wasn't going to say anything that was either going to help anybody sink or swim, because I didn't know anything. And I guess I'm sure that he read my depo, or his attorney read my depo, and he knew that there was really nothing that I said about anybody. So there was no ill anything in his face, or he didn't look upset or anything like that. I think he looked at me a couple of times, but nothing crazy.
Yeah. Was this the first trial when you said you saw the Markels during lunchtime?
No, I saw them at the second trial.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So how did the second trial go? Was it pretty much the same, or?
It was a lot easier. I think at this point, I already had gotten over that mental exhaustion. And although it's annoying, because who wants to be uplifted from their house and have to travel and do all these things on something that you're not even involved in, really? So it was annoying more than anything. But yeah, we, went to lunch and we sat, there's a sub shop that is walking distance from the courthouse. Almost everybody went there to eat lunch that day. And I remember sitting at this table and I'm eating my sub, and, they walked in. I saw Dan's sister walk in first, and then her parents walked in, and it was awkward, because I was like, well, maybe they think that I'm here, like, trying to defend my friend, or, and they're like, why is she defending this murderer or whatnot? So I felt really awkward. And I was just like, what if they try to talk to me or say something to me? Like, how am I going to respond? So that was a little weird, but they didn't say anything to me, or, even make eye contact. I don't think that they even realized that I was sitting there. I think I was overthinking the situation.
But for both trials, did you try to watch some of the proceedings?
Oh, yeah. Once I left, I did.
Yeah, afterwards.
Yeah. Once I left, I did. Obviously, I got a whole bunch of phone calls and text messages like, we watched you did so great. Whole time I'm like shaking in my boots, and I'm just like, did I do good? Like, did I mess up somewhere? But no, everybody was very supportive. I have a very big support team, thankfully, back home. It trickles down even to my boyfriend's employees. He has, the last trial he grouped the employees in the they have a warehouse area, and they have a TV in there, and he grouped everybody. He's like, my girlfriend's famous and she's on court TV, and and he had them watch me testify and stuff. So I do have a big support group, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, all in all, it was just not the best situation. It's very awkward to have to be up there, and you have all these cameras in your face, and you have so many people in the courtroom just staring at you to see what you're saying. And an attorney that is, questioning you and is trying to look out for the best for their client, sometimes they get a little aggressive, and, like, I don't like people talking to me a certain way. So I had to like tone it down and understand that, they're just doing their job. They're doing what they're getting paid to do. They're defending their client, or, whatever it is. So I had to like, get it together and know that I'm just there to do one thing. I say what I need to say. I say my piece and I'm leaving. And that's that.
Yeah. What did you think about all that evidence against Katie that came out?
It was so crazy.
Like all those calls.
Yeah. I was like, this is so wild. Like, I was watching the trial, like, it was the first time seeing all of these things. You know, I didn't know of all of these phone calls and text messages and, you know, trips to the rental car place and, you know, all those things that happened that I saw. That was the first time seeing them. So it was a big surprise for me, again, because that is not the person that I knew. So hearing these phone calls or seeing these text messages and, you know, the wiretaps, it was very surprising for me.
So did you feel kind of disgusted with Katie?
No, I can't say that I ever felt disgusted. I have had a lot of people that have asked me if I feel that, you know, that betrayed is the word that a lot of people use, you know, like, do you feel betrayed? And I'm like, actually, no, because thank God she didn't say anything to me. Thank God that she didn't say anything to me where I would have had more involvement in this and it would have just steered a whole different way. Because I absolutely would have said something, you know, and I feel that she cared for me at least that much and cared for my children because she knew how, you know, how much I care about my kids and, you know, my family, that she didn't say anything to me so she wouldn't involve me. So do I feel betrayed? No. Do I feel that, you know, this is not the person that I knew? And do I feel betrayed about that? Yes, because you showed me a whole different persona and I knew somebody else, and ultimately you lied. You know, you lied about who you truly were. Do I hate her? No. I don't think I will ever be able to hate her. You know, I don't, in my opinion, I don't even think the Markels hate her. You know, hate is so strong. You know, I feel that, yes, of course they're upset. You know, this woman was the middle person, you know, in setting up their child's, you know, murder, but I don't even think they hate her. You know, that's a very strong word. So no, I don't feel betrayed, you know, disillusioned maybe. You know, I was, you know, it was a shock, you know, out of left field, but I don't feel betrayed.
Yeah, and like, don't you feel like, how could she do this to her kids and her poor mom? You know, this could have caused her mom's cancer to
Yes. So I
come
think
back.
like that's one of the things I said. I said her mom likely got so stressed by the fact that her child is in prison, facing a life in there
Yeah.
forever. And I think that her mom being in remission and all of that stress triggered the fact that the cancer came back and ultimately killed her, you know. And from what I understand, it killed her quite quickly. It happened fast. And there was no chance for her to even make it through that. And I am a little angry at the fact that she didn't think about her kids when she was doing this and think about, you know, like, what if something happens? What if I get caught? What's going to happen to my kids? Did she do some future planning? Yes, she did, because she did meet with her attorney that was the same attorney that she used when she was dealing with the child support and all of that with Sigfredo, and set up the fact that if anything happened, you know, the custody of her children, you know, she set up pretty much the lineage of, you know, who would be taking care of her children. So in that part, I feel that she was responsible. And I think that she did that because she knew that, you know, maybe one day I will be caught and I want to make sure that my kids don't end up in the system. So at least in that part, I feel like she was responsible, I guess, in that way.
Oh, yes.
It never happened, you
I
know?
know. This is crazy. Yeah, she should be taking care of her kids. Jeez.
Yeah.
Do a legitimate job.
Yeah.
Well, getting to some of these people's questions,
Mhm.
do you still have any contact with Katie?
No, the last time I spoke to Katie was a little bit before Charlie's trial. And we spoke very, very quickly, very briefly. We spoke on the phone, and she just, you know, I basically asked her the same things, like, how you feeling? How you holding up in there? You know, she was telling me about how, you know, they love to braid her hair in there because, you know, she has very long hair. She's like, you know, they love to braid my hair in here. And, you know, we spoke about the regular things and, you know, like, are you reading any books or, you know, things like that. And, you know, we never, ever have spoken about the case, ever.
Yeah, well, it's all being recorded too, so makes sense. Yeah. Well, what did she say she was doing in prison?
She says that, you know, she just watches movies and, you know, she tries to get outside as much as she can. She did say that she likes where she is versus Leon County. Because she said that in Leon County, she never got to be outside much and see the sky. She said that specifically, like she couldn't see the sky. But where she was at, I guess, rec time or the rec yard or whatever, I guess it's open and she can see the sky. And so that was a big thing for her. She was like, I could see the sky, and I'm guessing, you're enclosed in this, 4x4 or whatever it is, for God knows how many hours a day, and you get to see the sky. That's a big deal when you're deprived from it. Actually, I'm just starting now to get into more YouTubes. Never been a YouTube girl. I started, I just recently started into the YouTube life. So I don't even really like, I'm subscribed to you. I'm subscribed to Jay's channel. But that's pretty much it. Like, I'm not really a YouTube girl. I use YouTube for, like, the other day, my bathroom drain was clogged and I had to use like the snake thing to like get in there. And I didn't know if I had to wind it to the right or the left. I wasn't sure. And my dad's not here. My boyfriend was working and I'm like, how do I use this thing? So I went on YouTube. Like, how do I use this? So
I
so use YouTube for that more than anything else.
Well, it can be a total time sink, but True Lifestyles actually has gotten Katie's prison records. So they're talking about, I don't know if you know this, but Katie had a girlfriend part of the time. It was some younger woman named Trinity. So she was caught making out with Trinity in the bathroom and being in bed together or something in the jail. So I guess you missed out on this.
I missed out on that. And I mean, hey, like, I feel that, you're in an all women's prison and you're going to be there for the rest of your days. You gotta make something work, I guess.
Yeah, she felt lonely. So,
I mean, that's why, the whole pen pal thing that she did, that website that she's on or whatnot. I feel that's what it is. She's lonely. She doesn't really have too many people on the outside world that, she communicates with. So I feel that that's her way of still being in touch with the outside world.
Yeah. Well, did she ask you to come see her?
No, she's never asked me because I don't know. I think she feels that I don't feel comfortable doing it. So she doesn't want to ask me to go. Now, if I was to say, like, go and try to put myself on her visitors list, she would absolutely approve it. It's not that she would turn down the fact, of me going there. But I don't know that she thinks that I may not feel comfortable doing it. So she doesn't want to put that pressure on me, like, hey, come and see me. Because also, it's not a 2-hour drive.
Yeah, it's pretty far.
It's like a 6-hour drive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Maybe just an email will suffice. Yeah.
Okay. And I know I think they have like video calls too now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right?
That's right. With the tablets. Okay. So I think I know your answer, but did she ever talk to you about the Adelsons?
No.
Just Charlie.
Other than Charlie, like if she was going on a date or, he would tell her that, he was coming by for lunch, like I said, when she was working there. But not really. We didn't have many conversations about Charlie or about, unless she was going to go, like she would get her teeth cleaned and do her dental work with Harvey. Because she did say that Harvey had a softer hand than Charlie. So she would prefer to get dental work done by Harvey rather than Charlie because Charlie was a little rougher. So she did most of her dental work with Harvey.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So I think you already talked about that whole beach day, but did you see Katie and Wendy go off in private?
No, we were all three of us. All four of us were together most of the time. At one point, like Katie and Charlie were in the pool at one side, talking, and I was talking to Wendy. That's when I was talking to her, about the book and, things like that. But she never had any private conversations, at least not in front of me. Maybe when I left, it's quite possible. I don't know what happened after I left, but while I was there, no.
Okay. So same person wanted to know. Interesting.
The adult entertainment.
But she was a bottle service
Yeah,
girl,
she
right?
was. She was.
Okay.
Absolutely. There's
Okay.
pictures. There's, I'm sure that they went through my phone, maybe some way, somehow. I never gave them my phone or anything, but I'm pretty sure that they saw, like, there was pictures and stuff.
Yeah. Okay. After Katie and Sigfredo were arrested, did any of them or the Adelsons try to contact you?
Contact me? No.
Yeah. Okay.
No,
Well,
no, no.
Katie, well, you said you were sort of in touch with Katie
Yeah,
before
like
she got arrested.
seldomly here and there. And, basically it was always the same text message. How you doing? How you holding up? How are the kids? And that's it. And, she'd be like, I'm okay. The kids are okay. How are you? How are the kids? And that was the extent of the conversation. The only other conversation that we had outside of that was, hey, can you come to my birthday dinner? When I invited her to the birthday dinner right before she was arrested. And that's it. We never talked about the case at all.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is an interesting question. Why did you hang out with people directly or indirectly that associate with the likes of Sigfredo and Lewis? Did you truly not know what these people were generally involved in? Well, you weren't really friends with them, right?
Okay. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is that we all grew up in the same area. And if you're from Miami, you know that Miami Beach is very small. Miami Beach is not that big. Miami Beach consists of maybe from beginning to end 90 blocks. Okay. And that includes the Surfside area, which is, they have like, a lot of synagogues and stuff like that. And like the mid beach. So if you grew up there, everybody knows everybody mostly, because again, we all go to one high school. So did I hang out with them? Absolutely not. I can count on one hand the times that I actually hung out with Sigfredo and Lewis. I can count on one finger when I hung out with Lewis. It was one time and one time only. And I wasn't even hanging out with him. I was at a fight party because there was a boxing match, and I was invited to this party by another family member that I'm friends with, that I've known all my life, a girl that I've known all my life. And I was invited to it, and we were all there. Did I sit down and have a regular conversation with this man and be like, hey, let's go hang out and, let's go to the pool or let's go to the beach? Absolutely not. I don't involve myself, like that with them. It was mostly Katie and Sigfredo, like I said, a handful of times when they got back together, which was, years after me and her were, hanging out a lot, and they got back together. And then we hung out a few times that I went to the apartment and they were there, and the time that we went to the beach. But that's it. Did I know that what they were involved in? No, at all. I didn't care to know. I didn't want to know. It was not my problem. I don't care what other people do with their life as long as I'm not involved in it. People are very judgmental, when like questions like this, like, how did she not know? Well, obviously they could be doing, whatever they are doing, but if they're not involving me and I don't know about it and has nothing to do with me, I do not care. That's not my problem.
Oh, random question. So is Sigfredo Cuban?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because he had a tattoo somewhere of the Cuban flag.
Yeah.
What about Lewis?
They're Puerto Rican.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just want to be clear, because it's funny, like people in the comments were saying, yeah, these Spanish people. I was like, they're not Spanish people, Katie.
Well, Spanish people technically are from Spain.
Yeah.
But no, Sigfredo is Cuban and Lewis is Puerto Rican.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay. Was your life negatively affected by being friends with Katie?
Nah. I still have the same group of friends. Nobody has stopped talking to me because, oh my God, she was friends with the murderer, or, nobody has, if anything, I just get asked questions when I go out. Like sometimes if I go to a bar or somewhere that, somebody recognizes me, like from school or whatever. Oh, hey, have you talked to Katie? Do you know anything about the case? Things. I get those questions all the time, especially in the beginning, like when her trials were going on. Oh man,
Yeah.
I couldn't go anywhere that somebody that I knew was there that wasn't asking me like, hey, like, do you know anything? Do you know what's going on? But negatively, no. There hasn't been anything crazy that has happened. It's not like anybody has shown up to my house or like threatened me or, any of those
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what did you think about Katie's sentence?
I think it's justified. This man is no longer here because of her doings. And I feel that if maybe she wouldn't have started the whole thing, he may still be here. I mean, and he may not. Maybe Charlie would have found somebody else to do it. But at least she wouldn't have been involved in it. The father of her children wouldn't have been involved in it, and now the kids don't have parents. So yes, I do think it's justified, and it's the consequences to your actions, unfortunately.
Yeah, a lot of these questions I think you answered. So let's see. What about, let's see. Okay, I think we answered that. This is the big question. Do your friends and family think Wendy is guilty or involved?
Absolutely think she is guilty. Everybody that I know thinks that she is guilty. There's not one person that does not think she's guilty. Now, a lot of people don't think she'll ever get convicted. A lot of people think that she's too smart and that, she was never found on any phone calls or emails or, WhatsApp messages or anything like that.
But we don't know for sure. So, hopefully there's
exactly.
Still
and we don't know, this trial is coming up. It could be the same thing that happened last time where, she gets arrested directly after the sentencing. We don't know what the state may have. We don't see everything on the docket. Everything is not placed on the docket. Yes, this is a it's a public record state, but it doesn't mean that they're divulging everything because they don't want to taint the jury pool either. And this is, public record. So if they are seeing absolutely everything, there's nothing there for them to be like, okay, we're going to review this. Sorry, there was a mosquito. We're going to review this. They review the docket and now, they see all these things. So now they're already making an opinion beforehand, and that's the last thing.
Because there's plenty of stuff that wasn't relevant in the first trial that then came out in the second and third trials.
Correct.
So let's see. Okay, so I still have hope. I'm thinking maybe after Wendy testifies at her mom's trial, then wouldn't that be great to have her handcuffed there? But
man, that would be great.
Yeah, that's my opinion. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, this is you having to guess again.
Yeah.
But Katie pass on the deal, on the plea deal?
So I have a theory about that, and I've always had a theory about that. So in the very beginning, I said, well, maybe Charlie is saying that he's gonna hurt her kids or hurt her mother or whatever it is if she pleads out and like rolls on him. And maybe she's scared because she can't do anything. She can't protect her children. She's on the inside. Her mother's no longer here, so she probably thinks like, who's going to protect my kids if this man tries to like, he has plenty of money. He can get this done. So for many, many years, that was my theory. She was scared for either herself, her children, or her family, that something was going to happen to them. So she didn't want to, take the plea. I also know that the first trial was a death penalty case.
Yeah.
And I felt that she didn't want to testify or plead because that would ultimately lead to possibly the father of her kids getting the death penalty. And no matter what, yes, they had a very toxic relationship and all of that, but in the back of her head, that was still the father of her children. And I don't think in any way that she would roll on him ever, even if he would tell her, do it, I'll take the death penalty. That man loved her so much that he would definitely say something like that to her. But I don't think that she would have the heart to do that. And she wouldn't be able to live with that guilt if he would have gotten the death penalty.
Yeah. But then later, the second time around, I mean, I personally feel like she was too confident. She thought she could
Yes,
get
she was
away
like,
with
it
it.
was a hung jury. That's the
Yeah,
same thing that's going to happen. I'm going to get a mistrial, and we're going to get the case dismissed. I think that was what she had in her head.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, it does seem like Tara Kawas was totally a diehard true believer. So
Yeah,
perhaps she just picked up on Katie's claims of innocence and was like,
yeah.
"You're right,
I
you're
feel
so
that,
unjustly treated," and
yeah,
Travis
I
knows
do
just
think that she wholeheartedly did care for Katie a lot. And believed Katie and believed in Katie's innocence. And, I commend, both of her attorneys. I feel that they are good attorneys. I did look into them a little bit, and currently actually Tara is on the defense team for another big case,
yeah.
going
The
on here. Yeah.
yeah, is that the OnlyFans?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's coming up soon too. So, I do commend the work that they do. I know that I believe they're also part of the Innocence Project as well, in some way,
Oh,
somehow. So, I don't think that she didn't believe her. I really do think that she believed that she was innocent. And she went with the story that Katie was telling her, and she really did care about Katie.
yeah. So, did you watch the proffers that Katie gave where she finally sort of spilled the beans?
Yeah. I still think that I think she's remorseful. I do think
Mhm.
she's remorseful. And I do think that she wanted to put the whole story together for the Markels, right? She wanted them to know exactly what happened. Hey, we started, putting it together at this time, and we did this and we did this. Do I think that she said everything? No. I think that she can't live with the fact that she did something that caused somebody's death. And she still can't sit down and tell herself, yes, I really did do this. So she doesn't fully want to take responsibility and say, like, yes, I did this, and this is how I did it, and this is the involvement, and these are the players. And I think that she's still in denial in a way.
Do you think like her memory was also affected by maybe taking Xanax or smoking lots of weed or,
I mean, that's quite
COVID?
possible. I mean, apparently, like, the amount of Xanax that she was consuming, I mean, it was alarming. I was like, how much was she taking? When was she taking this? I never saw her taking this.
Yeah,
So,
but wasn't Charlie like helping her probably like writing prescriptions to give her
yes.
these Xanny bars? Yeah.
Yes. When I saw all of that, I was like, oh man, like, this is crazy. So it's very possible maybe she has some holes in her brain, from the drugs or whatnot, because, I do know that some drugs do cause some holes in your brain and, memory loss. So it is possible. But then again, I do just think that she is still in denial of the fact that she played a part in this, and that, she was the one basically that caused it. Because if she wasn't part of it, likely it wouldn't have happened. And if it would have happened, it would have happened with somebody else that had no involvement with her, and it wouldn't have been her. But I feel that even if it wasn't her, it would have been somebody else. He would have tried to get somebody else to do it.
Yeah, I think so. They really wanted Dan gone out
Yeah.
of the way so Wendy could move down south with
Yep.
the kids. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so what's going on with this upcoming trial? Do you think you'll be a witness?
Man, I don't think I will be, just because, like I said, I do not know this woman from a can of paint. I've
Okay.
seen pictures of her. I saw when she got arrested, the night that she got arrested at Miami International. I watched it live happening.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was going to bed. I
Uh-huh.
was gonna go to bed. I think it was about 11 p.m. or something. And for whatever reason, I'm on Twitter, and I'm scrolling on Twitter in the rabbit hole of God knows what case or whatnot. And I'm just scrolling, and something pops up about, reports of Donna Adelson, arrested at Miami International. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
So like, I'm like hashtag Donna Adelson. So I'm just like, and I see this live feed and I'm like, what is this? So I click in there and I'm watching this and I see Pat Sanford and I see all of this going on and I'm like, no way, and I actually know somebody that works at that jail where she was going to be taken. So I'm texting and I'm like, if she goes in there, you need to let me know. Report back.
Did you intel?
He wasn't there that day. He was off that night. But yeah, definitely. Like I watched it live and I was silently cheering because my kids were in bed. It was a school night. But I was cheering because I was like, this woman needed to go down. She is the most egotistical, arrogant person I've ever seen in my life. Like, if anybody needs to go down, it's her. Like, she is the brains of the operation. And I feel that she herself didn't want to be involved. So she got her son to do her dirty work. She is the mastermind of all of this.
Yeah. Well, along with Wendy, we think, I think. Yeah. So you've actually been following the case pretty closely then. Yeah.
I look at the docket at least once a week to see if there's any filings, to see what's going on. I'm on Twitter a lot. I'm a big Twitter person more than any other social media platform. I'm on Twitter quite a lot. So yeah, I see like whenever any of these podcasters are, putting updates up or, showing, jail calls and, things like that. I keep up with it because I don't know if I'm going to end up having to go and testify, why I would testify and what I would be giving to the state or to the defense. I feel it would be nothing, but they might think that I am some sort of asset for what I'm not sure. Do I want to go? No. Have I written an email already to the prosecutor saying I'm not going? Yes.
But you have to if you're subpoenaed. I mean, you don't get a choice in that. They could arrest you if you don't show up.
It has come to the point that my life has been flipped upside down so much for the last, dang near 8 years now. Yeah. Well, it's been 2016.
Yeah, so that's
my life has been flipped for so long that at this point, I'd rather spend a night in jail than have to fly to Tallahassee and do this all over again.
Oh, okay.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
Sorry. Well, but see, like that's what I was going to ask you. They don't pay you for your time, right?
No.
Your lost wages.
No.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Like nobody's going to pay for that. Like if I have to find childcare and somebody to take my, my high schooler to, to school at 7:30 in the morning, who's going to do that? I'm a single mom, yes, I have a boyfriend, but he doesn't live with me. Nobody's going to be able to do it. So I have to accommodate my children, accommodate everything, accommodate work. I'm the lead paralegal in the office and I take care and review every single closing. Things do not close if I don't give the yes. I send wires, I cut checks, I get my assistant caught up on everything that needs to be done. So it's a lot of planning that goes into even just missing one day of work, so they don't pay me for that. They don't pay me for missing that work day or the 2 days, whatever it is. So it's, it's very uncomfortable, and again, just the traveling itself, because the way they book the flights and I'm traveling all day, like the last
to Atlanta. Yeah.
The last one was a direct flight. So that was cool. But they don't always do a direct flight. They do whatever, financially is best for the state. And it's understandable because, they are paying for it. But it's just, they uplift your life. And it's the most obnoxious thing ever. Like my kids, funny enough, like they know that I'm doing this interview today. And my daughter was like, oh my God, again? She's like, are you going to Tallahassee again? And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm going to.
Yeah, I don't think so. But I mean, who am I to, I don't know what the prosecution has is thinking behind
Yeah.
the scenes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote that email saying, hey, man, like, I am not going, nobody has answered me. It has
They'll
been.
probably be like, would you like to be arrested if you don't show up and we need you?
But funny enough, Sarah's pretty good about emailing me and calling me, and whenever I have any type of concerns. Like the last time I had an issue where the police showed up to my house the weekend before I was supposed to fly out for Charlie's trial, because I was supposed to testify, and they showed up to my door. My kids are home. My dad wasn't here yet. They scared the hell out of my kids because they're banging on my door. 3 police officers. I was already subpoenaed. Flights were like booked and everything. So I email Sarah and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like at this point, this is harassment. Like, leave me alone. Like
it's excessive.
Yeah, it's too much. Like, I get it. Okay, you need me to go. I've already spoken to you. It's been organized. I'm flying out. Stop coming to my house. You're scaring my kids. My kids thought that they were here to arrest me.
Oh, that's awful. Yeah. Well, you did also say it's affected your children too, because they knew Katie, or they knew Katie's kids also.
Yeah. So my little one is Katie's goddaughter. And when Katie was arrested, she was very little. So she has very little memory of Katie, but she does have memories of Katie because there are pictures in the house, like not hung up, but I have like a box of pictures of like old pictures. And one time she had to do, a project for school. And, I was like, oh, just go in the box, like to get old pictures. She had to do like a family tree or something. And, there was old pictures in there. And, she came up to me and she goes, well, when is Thea Katie coming out of jail? Because she does know that she's in jail. And I was honest. And I said, well, she's never getting out of jail. And for whatever reason, my daughter has made this plot in her head that Katie's in jail for littering.
Oh, she's so innocent.
Yes. And the reason for this is like, my daughter is very like, save the earth, save the trees, save the animals, don't litter, gardening. And, she's very, she's 9 years old, like she's not thinking about this person is in jail. So I believe she said that around like Earth Day. And I think they were talking about like not littering and things like that. So I think that she made that plot in her head about the littering. So I was like, yeah, she's never coming out. And she goes, man, so harsh. Such a harsh sentence for littering. And I didn't have the heart to correct her because I don't feel that at 9 years old, that's a conversation I should be having with her.
Yeah.
As to why really she is. Am I going to, ultimately tell her one day? Yes, because I am very honest and open with my children, but I don't feel that this is the time yet, to tell her that. But it has affected, them. And sometimes they see pictures of the kids and they're like, well, we want to see the kids. And, how am I going to tell them like, hey, like, no, I you can't see them because I don't talk to her brother. And he hasn't let anybody see the kids for many years. And I get it. He's protecting them and he wants to make sure that they're okay and protecting their mental health. And it's hard, and I know that one of her kids does have, he has autism. So, it's hard raising a child like that, and, raising 4 kids because he has 2 children of his own. Yeah. So, I'm pretty sure his life was uprooted and he's just trying to do the best that he can with what he has.
Oh, but now that the ex-wife is out of prison, do you think she's helping?
Oh, I'm pretty sure she is. She didn't lose her parental rights or anything while she was in there. I do know that he did file for divorce.
Yeah.
While she was in there, but I'm sure she's around. And I never saw her as a bad mother or anything. She was there for her kids, and she was very attentive the day that I met her and stuff. So I'm pretty sure she's around and helping. So it's probably easier now, but still, you're raising 2 kids that are not your children. And, you got to make sure that they're, they're eating, they're bathing, they're getting to school, they're getting good grades, they're in activities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you're doing this for 4 kids. That's a lot. Yeah. I have 2 and I'm barely surviving,
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of that, I don't want to keep you on this internet for so long because Great. Okay, so what's your account called on TikTok?
You know what? I actually don't even remember. Hold on.
Okay. Yeah, because
Oh, okay. So my account on TikTok is the same as my handle on
oh,
Twitter, but without the underscore V.
okay, so it's Yindrita.
Yep.
Okay. So are you planning on doing more? Maybe you should
Yes.
wait till after Donna's trial.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Jay wanted to get me on for like while the trial was going on for like commentary and stuff like that, which I'm open to it unless I do have to ultimately go
Yeah, I don't think
and
you should
testify.
because they might decide
Yeah.
that they need you as a witness.
Yeah.
So
So I'll
yeah.
definitely be open to, go back on and talk after the trial, once maybe even do like maybe like a verdict watch or, whatever happens
Yeah.
there. I'm
Yeah.
definitely open for that.
So how did you feel when Jay contacted you? We're like, who is this person?
Oh man, I was like, I knew who he was just because I had been following him and seeing like different trials that he was commenting on and whatnot. Man, I screenshot that so fast and I sent it to my boyfriend. I was like, what do I do? What do I do? Do I go on? Like, do I do this? And my friends were like, yes, like definitely do it. Like, you need to say your side of the story, and your experience with this whole thing, because everybody hears and sees what's happening with these, with the defendants and stuff, but nobody knows the witnesses, what's going on. So it would be the first time that anybody hears from you and actually like has a conversation with you outside of you being a witness at a trial and sees like who you are as Yindra. It's not just, Yindra the witness. It's like, I'm a person, like the regular
Yeah,
person.
you're just a regular person, so people shouldn't be so mean toward the
Yes.
witnesses, right? I mean, I've been accused of that, of being a big bully on YouTube. So I'm like, yeah, maybe with the regular people who had no criminal, shady
Yeah.
business, then we shouldn't be totally making fun of them or
Yeah.
bashing them.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm just a witness. Like I'm doing what I have to do because I have to do it because legally I have to,
You got subpoenaed. Yeah.
like, do I want to do this? Do I want to be, at this trial? Do I want to be testifying? Do I want to be on court TV? No. Like I've never wanted to be a thing of, monetizing off of it or, becoming famous off of it. If I wanted to do that, I would have been talking about this for years, and I never did.
2020,
Yeah,
like
I just wanted to do
money.
yeah, I just wanted to do like a cool, like a fun, story time. Like nobody knew who I really was and never really knew what happened there or my side of it. And that's why I did it. And I just kind of snowballed and like a lot of people started to recognize me and like I gained like a whole bunch of followers like out of nowhere. So it's pretty cool. Like my boyfriend always says like, I tell him all the time, like joking around, and I was like, one of us has to be famous. But and I really didn't do it for that, but it's been okay. I mean, nobody really has been mean. Everybody has been very supportive, after Jay, even during the podcast, everybody was so nice. Like I think maybe there was one negative comment that somebody said because of the lag, like in the audio.
Oh, saying the audio was terrible. They
Yeah. But it was only like a couple of minutes in the beginning, and then it was fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was so excited because it was like, oh, finally we get to hear from somebody new who's connected to the case.
Yeah.
To hear, especially just that, you thought Katie was a good person. That to me is very interesting, that she was your best friend. And you had no idea
None.
that she was cooking this stuff up.
Again, though, in that sense, I am so grateful that I didn't know, that I wasn't involved in any way, that I didn't have to make a decision as to, do I stay quiet and try to help my friend, or do I say something and might affect me and my family? You know, like that's a hard decision to make, because you're like, I'm going to throw this woman under the bus and I'm going to look like a terrible person to her, throwing her under the bus. But no, it's because I need to save myself and my family and my children. If I don't have any involvement in this, I'm not going to be part of this.
Yeah. Plus, you know, from what we've heard, Charlie was a dangerous person. You know, there was somebody who told the police that he liked to do things in a very sneaky way, so things couldn't be traced to him.
Yeah.
So you know, I'm just thinking of how scared you were that night in the hotel.
I was even scared before that, because when the FBI interview was leaked, because it was leaked.
What?
When the FBI interview that I did, when they came, the report from the FBI was leaked on the internet. And when that happened, my place of employment was shown on there. Like, so many things were shown on there. I was scared. I called Pat Sanford and I told him that I needed them to send letters to both of my children's schools, that nobody was allowed to pick up my kids, that if anything suspicious, you know, was happening or was seen or whatnot, that they needed to call the FBI. And they sent in, you know, they faxed in letters and said that to my kids' school. I was very scared.
Yeah, because actually, when I was Googling you, I did see some sort of PDF of your interview. So I didn't know how long ago that appeared. But that is kind of scary if it has your workplace and more personal info. Yeah. Well, luckily Charlie is behind bars finally. Oh, I loved, sorry, my voice is dying again. But I just loved your quote on Jay's show when you said that theory was shit. The theory was shit.
But it is.
I'm sorry for laughing.
Who is believing this? Who in their right mind that knows how to add 2 + 2 is believing this crap? Who?
Yeah. Well, he was saying it in such a genuine fashion, you know, with this like kind of, it was almost just like Wendy testifying, you know. With
this man sat in jail. He sat in jail for a whole year. A whole year. This man went to med school. Okay.
Dental school. And he got in because of his dad, supposedly.
But, you know, you have to memorize a lot of things, you know, at least to, you know, do your tests and things like that. Yeah. He could have easily put this story together, read this over and over and over until he memorized this back and forth, front and back, and just every time that he spoke, he had an answer to everything he was being asked. It was rehearsed. This wasn't like a free-flowing testimony. This was a rehearsed testimony. He made up this whole thing, this extortion. So what is it going to be now with Donna? A double extortion? Because that's where it's going to go. Because what's going to be her defense?
Just that she's poor little old lady who believed Charlie because her son wouldn't lie to her. So she was so scared. That's why she didn't go to the police or all her friends who are judges and attorneys, you know, because they were so scared of the Latin kings. Oh my gosh, you know, they're going to come get me. You know?
Please. Now, my thing is, I'm waiting to see if she's going to have any outbursts.
Yeah, I would love to see her totally freak out and show her true colors, because she did that already back in December, where she was just like, oh my God, you know, like with that weird.
Yeah. And the judge was like,
you know, yeah, where she just couldn't help herself. She just had to keep like mouthing off and shaking her head and stuff.
So narcissistic, so egotistical, you know, somebody that's always had everything and anything that they wanted. And she always had her way. And she can't fathom not having her way. And she thinks that she's going to be able to talk herself out of this. And she's not. And, you know, I hope, and this is going to sound horrible, I hope she rots in there. She deserves it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, trying to change the subject though, in terms of today, since it is the 10th anniversary of Dan's death, yeah, I just don't know if you would like to send a message or say something to Dan's parents.
So we, when I was on Jay's show, we had a talk about this because, again, like everybody is asking, like, how can you be friends with Katie, and this and that, and I want to make it very, very clear. I don't condone anything that she's done or any party has done here. I can't, I can't put myself in Dan's parents' shoes, because I don't know what it's like, and I hope to never know what that's like. And I sympathize with them each and every day. It must be horrible to be without your child, and I would never be able to understand that. And I'm so sorry that this happened. It was stupid. It wasn't called for, and it wasn't something that should have occurred. And I pray that they're able to find their peace some way, somehow, one day. And I pray that those boys are able to make it and do well and thrive in life. And it was just a very unfortunate situation. I'm so sorry. There's really not much that I can say, or how much sorry I can say, but it just sucks, and it should have never happened. And I hope that everybody involved, every single person involved, is arrested and put away for the rest of their days, because these people did not deserve what happened to them. They were good, hard-working people, just living their life. This man just wanted to be part of his children's life, and it was cut short for the stupid reason.
That's right. Yeah. And you did mention before that Katie never mentioned Dan Markel specifically, right? She just said that Charlie's brother-in-law was in an accident.
Yes, that he was in an accident, and that but that he was okay, and that was that.
That was it.
That was it. And it was never brought up in conversation ever again, because she didn't tell me, oh, he passed. So we didn't circle back, and then I would have asked questions like, okay, what happened? Like, what type of accident was it? I didn't even know what type of accident it was. I didn't know if it was a car accident, a motorcycle accident, a boat accident. I didn't know anything. And I didn't dig for more details, because she didn't voluntarily say anything else. I felt like everything was okay. Charlie never brought it up, any other time that I saw him. So I put it in the back of my head, and that was that, until, that morning that I saw the Sun Sentinel. And then I started to piece everything together like a puzzle. And I was like, oh, wow, this was no accident.
This is crazy. Yeah. Well, I'm so sorry you got thrust into the public eye because of this. But, but hopefully, you're doing great. I thought it was also a funny comment. Someone said you were the only normal witness in that trial. And I was like, that's true. That's why I liked you, watching you on YouTube, because I was like, hey, she just seems like a normal person. Compared, because you came before those two wacky Adelson employees back in 2019. And they were so, especially the lady after you, Clarissa, she was so on another planet. It was bizarre.
We were on the same flight.
Did you talk to them?
June was on my flight. Clarissa was on my flight, and the other lady, the tall lady,
Erica.
The other employee, Erica.
Yeah,
we were all on the flight, and it was dreadful, because I got to the gate, and I look over, and they're all sitting there, and I'm like, and of course they recognize me right away, and they're like, hi, and I'm just like, So here I am. They're like, oh, come and sit, and I'm like, okay. And then when we get to Tallahassee, and they're like, well, we might as well share an Uber. We're all going to the same hotel. Shared an Uber with them as well. And then we were all on the same floor.
Oh, so it was almost like some sort of field trip, girls' field trip. Well, did you do small talk with them?
I didn't want to.
Okay.
I didn't want them to try to ask me any weird questions. I didn't want them to give me any information that I didn't care to hear. When I went on the Uber with June, I put on my AirPods and I was reading my deposition. There was no conversation. The only other time I had a conversation with June was because I needed help zipping up my dress.
Your dress? What?
My dress. I was wearing a dress for when I went to testify, and the zipper was like really, really long, and I have short arms, so I couldn't reach the zipper at the bottom. So I knocked on her door and I was like, hey, can you zip me up, please? And that was the extent of the conversation.
Okay. Well, that makes sense, because really, isn't it true the witnesses should not be talking about the case?
You're not supposed to. Not even when you're out on the bench, you're supposed to talk to each other.
Okay. Yeah. So that makes it so awkward, because everybody knows like why they're there, and you're like, I saw you on YouTube, or I think I know what your background is.
Yeah. And she's a realtor down here, right? And I do title. So you would think that maybe I would try to connect with her and, get her business or whatnot. And I was like, I am not interested in that. No, thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, yeah, because I get the feeling if there is a trial against Wendy, June would probably also have to be a witness again.
100%.
So, yeah, so maybe it's not such a good idea, even though you could make some business connections. So,
yeah. All business is not good business, though.
Yeah.
And he's like, how do you...
Can you imagine yourself contacting Tara Kawas to try to get a job or something? Like, do you think
I had a conversation with her one time, and she said that if I ever considered law, that she wouldn't mind helping me out and, writing a reference letter for me, and stuff.
That's nice.
I used to speak to her, quite a lot. I would ask her, like, how's Katie doing? Like, how's she holding up in there? When I wouldn't be able to talk to Katie, I would ask her, randomly here and there. And, she was always very nice. She's a cancer survivor. So, we talked about that as well. So she always told me, she's like, like, if you ever want to be in law or do law, she's like, I don't mind writing a letter for you as a reference, if you need it. And, that was very nice of her.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Who'd have thought? Yeah. Well, it's really cool to meet you because of this. And thank you for being a great witness, one of the normal witnesses for this whole crazy trial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I can't believe it's been almost 3 hours.
Almost 3 hours. This is the same thing that happened with Jay, though. We were only supposed to be on for an hour. We ended up being on for 2 hours plus. I talk a lot, and I like to talk.
That's okay.
So
no, that's okay. People are excited to hear from someone different finally. So hopefully we'll stay in touch. I'll see if you have to testify. I don't think you would have to testify, but what do I know?
We'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. We'll definitely be in touch then. I better get going because I need something to drink.
I need to have some dinner.
Yeah, I know you must be starving. So.
Alrighty. Okay. Have a good one.
Thank you so much for your time and everything.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. Have a good night.